Hello, hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another edition of AJE's Special Education Thursday. I'm still your host, Maria Bloyer, and I'm here today with some folks from OSSE-DOT, and that stands for the Office of the State Superintendent of Education, Department of Transportation. We're very lucky. We've got Michael Riley, the director, and Shaneika Webb and Dionne McAdoo, who are here to be his lifeline and these actual experts in a lot of this stuff. We're just going to have a little chat about kind of everything you need to know to get started in understanding special education, transportation in DC, how it works, how it doesn't work, what's different that parents might not know about. And again, like always, it's a chat and a conversation. So we do have a couple of slides just to share some information for families, but it's not a full training and we'll get rolling. So I always like to start with who are we talking to today? Do you want to go first, Director Riley, and tell us, who you are and how you wound up here?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Yeah, so my name is Michael Riley. I'm the director of OSSE-DOT. I've been with the organization since January 3rd of 2023. I come from a background of student transportation and transportation in general, and I'm super pleased and happy to be serving the District of Columbia in this role and the residents and the parents and families. I have personal experience in dealing with students with disabilities. And so I'm just, super excited to be a part of this. And one of the questions I was going to ask is, will I be penalized for being self-deprecating? But you already started that for me, Maria, so I appreciate that. So yeah, so absolutely want to introduce Shaneika and Dionne, allow them to speak on their own behalf. But just thanks again for the invite.
No problem. Yeah.
Okay, my name is Shaneika Webb. I have been with OSSE Division of Student Transportation. I'm going on my 13th year this year. I am the manager of the Parent Resource Center that is housed in the Office of Customer Engagement, and just happy to be here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Dionne.
Good morning. My name is Dionne McAdoo. I am the community outreach specialist. Actually, I'm one of two community outreach specialists for OSSE's Division of Student Transportation. I have been with OSSE-DOT coming up on 10 years this April, and I am excited about all of the things that we have coming to offer information and to gain more clarity on what we do, how we operate, and how we can be of service to the families in the District of Columbia. So thank you for the invite, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. I think this is the first time we've had, 4 people on Special Education Thursday. Usually there's, 2 talking heads, maybe 3. But I think that's probably appropriate because special education in DC is a little bit complicated and student transportation in DC is really complicated, especially so for students with disabilities. So I just kind of starting very basically, who does OSSE serve? And can you explain OSSE's relationship to the schools a little bit, just to frame the conversation?
Yeah, I can start. You see why I brought these ladies with me. They're the veterans, right? And so I fully expect to stumble over a bit of this, but I think they're welcome to come rescue me anytime. But ultimately, OSSE DOT actually operates under the purview of OSSE, which is the state education agency, and we so happen to be the transportation provider that services both DCPS, non-public charter schools, non-public charter schools, and we service 3 states actually, with sending DC residents to different jurisdictions based upon the particular needs of the student and the program abilities to service that student well. And so we ultimately transport to right around 250 some odd school sites, and over 4,000 students are transported each day. And our service is, kind of white glove. We go door to door pickups and door to door drop offs from school to home, home to school, and also any other related service programs that are assigned via the individual education plan for the student under the transportation plan portion of that IEP. And so
Okay.
you're right, Maria, in saying that it's a complex operation. We ultimately operate out of 4 terminals within the district and send buses everywhere, according to what I just described. So that's OSSE. It's an unusual kind of arrangement because typically the state education agency doesn't house a local or an operator. It's typically providing monitoring, technical assistance, and guidance. And yet here we are kind of doing a bit of both. So it becomes a bit of a challenge when we're monitoring ourselves, so to speak, because typically what would happen is the state education agency would, in fact, provide guidance to the local districts or the local charter schools that may contract or outsource their transportation services. So we're unique. I think maybe only Hawaii may have a similar setup as ours, but I think we were the only 2 state agencies that provide transportation.
And
So
just to clear up a few things, just to make it clean, we only provide service to District of Columbia residents. However, those students with a IEP or a Section 504 plan may attend programs outside of the District of Columbia. And in those cases, we do transport to non-pub schools. However, only students who are eligible for transportation are transported outside of the District of Columbia.
that's a really good point. And I think that kind of brings me to the next natural question, which is who's eligible for transportation and who decides who's eligible for transportation? I don't know if Dionne, you want to lead that off, or Director Riley, you want back in?
No, please. Happy to have Dionne answer that.
I'm happy to answer that question. So a student's school, their LEA, would actually make the determination via the IEP or Section 504 process. When it's determined that that student is eligible for transportation and will require transportation to be able to have access to their special education related services, that is when OSSE-DOT is notified of that need via a TRF that is submitted from the
Oh, we have a
Am I
we
moving
have a rule.
too fast?
You can't say an acronym
No
without,
acronyms.
Oh,
saying
sorry.
what it is. So what is a TRF?
A TRF is a transportation request form that is submitted via the LEA. And by LEA, I mean the local education agency that the student is enrolled. So if it is a public charter school or a DCPS school, that school is then responsible for notifying OSSE Student Transportation that the student requires transportation and what those arrangements or accommodations are.
So that's perfect. And the way I usually describe this to families, and you can tell me if you agree, is that OSSE-DOT, you guys are the provider, but not the decider. Is that accurate?
That is absolutely accurate.
Yes. Mhm.
We operate based on the information that is provided to us.
Perfect. So that brings me to my next question, which is, sometimes we get calls from families who say, gosh, OSSE is at my IEP meeting. When does that happen? And what's typically your role if you find yourself at an IEP meeting?
I can take that one, if you want me to, Dionne. If OSSE Division of Student Transportation happens to be an IEP meeting, it's typically involving some form of student behavior. Someone from our safety and training team of a behavioral support specialist would be there to attend just to ensure that the student has the correct accommodations for services, i.e. specialized seatbelts, AKA harnesses, weighted vests, travel chairs, things of that nature, or there may be a need for a one-to-one bus aid. So if someone from OSSE Division of Student Transportation is an IEP meeting, that would be one of the reasons, just to give any feedback on these accommodations. We have nothing to do as it pertains to whether or not the student would actually be eligible for the service.
Yeah. So like Director Riley said earlier, when he talked about OSSE-DOT's kind of two roles, there are, a technical assistance provider and a monitor and also a service provider. You're a provider most of the time for families. That's mostly how families see you, right, as a provider. But sometimes if you're at an IEP meeting there, you might be there to provide technical assistance, information, support, give the team the information they need to make the decision that they need to make.
Yes.
Did I say that?
Yes.
I got it. Thumbs up. I'm loving it. So one thing we haven't talked about is we've talked about who's eligible, who decides who's eligible. Director Riley talked about going everywhere. I'll do transport a lot of kids.
Wheels on the bus go round and round.
Oh, we cannot have that song in my head the rest of the day.
The rest of the day, you got it.
So my other question is, we all see the yellow buses. I happen to live near a non-public. I see the yellow bus come by all the time. But that's not the only kind of service you provide, right? That's not the only way students are transported. Is that correct?
That is correct.
More about the options?
Yeah, certainly. We have we see the need to have different tiers of service. One, because our ridership demands are increasing, and two, there's only a finite amount of money available to provide the services that we have to provide. And so, there's a couple ways that we provide transportation through OSSE. We have the yellow bus.
Mhm.
We also have our own fleet of vans. We also most recently have increased our level of participation with alternative transportation providers. So currently we have 8 providers that are picking up eligible students, within a range of some DANs to vans to SUVs to even cutaway buses. You may see tour buses even taking some of the kids, black limousine, SUVs. There's just, we have worked to increase our capacity around that with some multiple year awards so that we can continue to offer this service in an expanded way to meet the need. We also have parent reimbursement. So in the event that OSSE may fail to provide the service, a parent can elect or can apply for parent reimbursement, and we could provide that as well, where they would transport the student and be paid a rate consistent with, I think it's Uber, Lyft. It's like $1. I don't want to give the wrong. It's like you can go to the website to find the information, but I believe it's like $1.48 or $1.68 per mile. We also have Metro cards. Kids ride free for our population of students, where the IEP team would make the determination the student could, as part of their, what's the term? Living skills.
Secondary transition skills, independent travel skills.
Yeah, independent living. Yeah, the independent living skills that they can take Metro. Then we would provide them a Metro card as well. There's another program that we are looking at that I don't want to give too much information about. It's still in the works, but some of your constituents may have received a survey last October where we talked about providing a stipend to parents to self-transport. And so looking for more information to come out about that pretty soon. The concept would be that parents would receive $400 per month to self-transport their student and be paid, be paid monthly. Let's see, am I missing any other ways that we transport, ladies? I think that's it, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So so that's helpful to know. That's helpful for families to know that there's support around independent transportation and travel. And I just always want to take this chance to remind families that WMATA does offer travel training for students with disabilities, and that is a super important independent living skill that I am a big fan of.
Mm-hmm.
So now we've done who does what, and we've done what you do, different kinds of ways to get kids to school. And AJE is the Parent Training and Information Center. So people call us when things are not going great.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the calls we get a lot from families is, oh, I called the school and they said, I got to talk to OSSE about the problem. And then I called the PRC, that's the Parent Resource Center that Ms. Webb is managing. And the PRC said, well, the school hasn't told us anything. What, and a lot of parents, I think kind of feel like they're the kid caught in a dysfunctional relationship. And I'm wondering, do you have suggestions for families about how to navigate that? When should parents expect OSSE to solve a problem versus when should parents expect their school to solve the problem? What's the dividing line for you all? And do you have any suggestions for families navigating that? Because I know that can be really tough.
Well, for me, I certainly want to hear from Shaneika and Dionne. I don't think there's a dividing line. I think we're in this together. And I know that our mission is to provide safe transportation services to students with disabilities. And so in order to kind of build a more comprehensive support structure, we have, of course, we have the training for the bus staff, coaching on a variety of things that support, disability awareness, behavior management, principles of de-escalation, professional engagement, incident reporting. We do a lot of things, but when things happen on the bus, we have our safety and training team work with the schools and the staff, work with the schools to provide support, and then of course work with the staff to give engagement strategies to de-escalate these crises. And so ultimately there shouldn't be, things can exist on a case-by-case basis. For parents who have issues, they can call the PRC, and then we'll then filter that information, open up a complaint. Our parents will then receive case numbers, which will then go through our complaint process. But when I'm sorry if parents are hearing OSSE this, school that. That's an issue for me. I think that needs to be raised immediately if that's taking place, so that we can get on the same page and support one another to get the student the services that they need. Love to hear what Dionne and Shaneika may have to say about that.
I know Shaneika wants to jump in on the part of it. And
I look that anxious. I am so sorry.
We definitely want to be proactive about our communication to parents, especially as it pertains to setting up transportation and making sure that students have the accommodations that they need and that we have accurate information for the students. So on the community outreach end, we're definitely reaching out to the schools and the LEA saying, hey, we don't have this information for students. School is scheduled to start at this date. We need this information either corrected or we need complete information. Can you guys check your information and make sure that it's done? And sometimes there is a lag between the communication that we send out to schools and when they're able to actually sit down at a computer and make those adjustments or even confirm the information for a student. I know a lot of pain points that we have at the start of the school year are address things and things related to a student's accommodations, new accommodations to school. Perhaps their schedules change. Perhaps they need to stay later for certain programs. And the school wasn't aware when they initially put in the request for transportation in June. And so we do have those times where parents are frustrated, and we completely understand that, but we want parents to understand, although we're giving you the information that we're not able to make those changes and that the school would need to do that, and we are referring you back to the school, on the back end, we're reaching out to the school as well saying, hey, this parent is calling, we need this information right away. If you get it to us by this time, we will do our best to try to make sure that we confirm the information in the system so that when the parent calls back, we do have the information available. But I do want to throw it out there that we're just not sending them away saying, hey, we can't help you, and then that's the end of where our work starts. It definitely continues with communication to the school. And then I'll pass it over to Shaneika and she can talk about how the PRC processes this information.
Oh, but I'm going to pause you on that because I want to talk about the PRC for a minute. So I'm going to ask you one follow-up question, Dionne, and then we're going to talk about the PRC with Ms. Webb. Is that okay?
Okay.
All right, perfect. So I think you said something really helpful, about what are common pain points and how you want to be proactive. and, updating information at the school to make sure it gets to OSSE in time. Are there things that parents can do when they're talking to the school to make sure that they are communicating what needs to be communicated to OSSE? For example, I'm always telling families, hey, make sure at the end of that IEP meeting that you know who's going to submit the transportation request form. And if you say transportation request form and nobody at the IEP meeting knows what you're talking about, you need to figure out who the person at your school who does transportation is, because they're the ones who is going to do the transportation request form. Do you have hints like that to make some of those pain points more manageable for families?
Absolutely. It helps us so much when a parent is able to say, hey, I've spoken to Mrs. So-and-so. They are the ones that we made this arrangement with, because then our communication can go directly to that person. And as we all know, school years change, teachers change, administrative staff change. So when a request is put in June, it doesn't necessarily guarantee that the person who put the request in will still be working for that particular school. And so it definitely helps for parents to have the contact information of the staff, a group of staff. Generally, they'll have a staff responsible and a backup. And so it's helpful when parents have that information. In the event that they didn't catch that information or they weren't able to get that information, it just helps us for the parent to be able to reach out to the school and say, hey, we've gotten this information from OSSE-DOT. I've spoken to this person at this particular time. This is the date that I plan to call back. Can we go over my contact information? Can we go over my address information? Before I leave here today, I want to make sure that this information is accurate so that when you go back into the system and make your corrections, be it for an accommodation, be it for an address, be it for a telephone number, when we're trying to contact parents to notify of adjustments to the route, that all of that information is verified to be accurate, so that when it is worked out and things are worked, the expedition of it, the request being processed and the changes being made can go rather quickly.
Yeah, and I agree. I think it's really important. And I tell families a lot, hey, look, just because you told the front desk, the receptionist at your school, that you have a new address and a new phone number, that does not mean that got to the special education data system. It does not mean it got to your teachers, and it definitely does not mean it got to OSSE. And I fully acknowledge that's extra work that families have to do. But I am forever saying, look, you got to tell everybody, because these are not systems that talk to each other automatically. And now that we're just killing Miss Webb over here, and she just wants to talk about the
I'm just listening.
Yeah.
But like, just to piggyback off what Dionne and Mr. Riley was saying, we always love to work in the spirit of partnership. However, we also like to level set the expectations. So the Parent Resource Center is a view-only center. We do not make any changes. We don't have access to make any changes. So we essentially, we have to refer them back to the school to say, hey, you need to have your address updated. We don't have the right one on the transportation request form in the system. You need to have your telephone number updated because we don't have the right contact information. We don't have the right authorized receivers as far as who can get the student off the bus. Those are all things that we have to send them back to the school for. But like Dionne said, we also have a level of working in the back end as well to reach out to those our school partners to say, hey, spoke to parent of Jane Doe this morning. Doesn't look like we have the right address on file for the student. Can you update the transportation request form? Or we don't have the right contact information. Can you make sure you update the telephone number just so we can ensure that we are getting your notifications of your route changes, any incidents and accidents, making sure that the parent guardian is being notified in a timely fashion, but we have to make sure that we have the right information on file. So we will always refer them back because we are a view-only center.
Maria, can you see how in such wonderfully good hands we are with two awesome, articulate professionals that are managing these processes? I mean, I'm learning some new coin terms myself. View only center. That's the best description that I've heard to really describe the kind of, I think, some of the frustrations that families feel when they call us. We are a view only center. That is stupendous. Thank you for that.
No,
Well,
I wrote it down and put a little box around it.
That's right.
I think it exactly describes, the challenges, right?
Mhm.
Because you can give information, but you all aren't really in a position or empowered to change any of that information, which
Yes. Yep.
we're not going to go into this, but which is why some of the data transitions in the district lately have been so difficult, right? Because
Yeah.
the people you actually talk to are not necessarily the ones empowered to change your information,
Yep.
um,
Mhm.
which generates many gray hairs. Many.
Yeah. And I already don't have any here.
We're going to go back to high school and ask you to move that box, Maria, and put a heart around instead with an arrow. Take it back to high school. Maria and View Only Center with a heart around it.
So I think we've talked a lot about kind of the logistical and administrative and practical things parents can do to make things go more smoothly. I love the fact that you talked about what happens when things go wrong. You can call the PRC. You're going to get a complaint number. I really appreciate the fact that you verified that. I'm always telling families, hey, look, you got to get a complaint number. So I'm glad that you confirmed. Yes, you definitely do get a complaint number. My other question is, how do parents know what's going on, right? How do parents, you talked about the need to be proactive. You talked about, Dionne said you guys were proactive. How do parents know what's going on, right? I know there's the Twitter feed, there's some text alerts, but how is OSSE as a provider communicating with families?
Yeah, so I mean, this is open for everyone, and yet I would say that we've made some improvements this year, I believe, in how we communicate out information, particularly around the daily operations. So last fiscal year, or excuse you, last school year, the end of the school year, we introduced the daily DOT update page, which will alert families, or is a place kind of like I don't want to use a big word, but like a repository of information to tell families which routes will be delayed. And it doesn't go into reasons, but it'll give them sort of a time delay. And the way we measure that is we route everything and we schedule and route everything based upon the bus leaving the terminal to the students' homes to then the school. And we figured that if a bus is late leaving the terminal to begin their route by 15-20 minutes, that um, you know logically it follows that it could also be late to school or late to your pickup time by the same 15 or 20 minutes. Sometimes the schools, we have parents who might say, well, I got an alert, but the bus showed up on time. And it just kind of depends on the day. Sometimes you can make up time on street. Maybe you don't run into as many lights. Maybe there is just less congestion because it's, I don't know. There's all kind of myriad of reasons of why. And sometimes that could be a little bit later because, you do run into more congestion you expected, whatever else. And so, but ultimately it's kind of it's a way to alert parents and a way for the parents to control the information by going to that site and seeing if their route is scheduled to be late by any number of minutes. That's one thing. Second thing we've done is created a direct line for those parents to have communication from the bus, from bus attendants who have phones, and we call it our parent texting program, where the bus staff will also text the parents on file to say, "Hey, your bus, we're 5 minutes out, or we're 10 minutes out." So it's just another way of kind of giving more communication. I mean, you mentioned the text messaging. I mean, ultimately, am I missing something here, ladies? I mean, Shaneika, your department does a lot of this, and
Yeah. So
I
as the go ahead, I'm sorry.
no, I was going to say one thing that I will say though is that we've seen a lot of improvements to where now when things escalate, parents are now saying, well, I get this every single day, or I get this communication every day, and today I didn't receive it. And that's really the complaint more than what I saw in the past, which was I'm not getting enough, or whatever else. And so I think that's a marker of improvement, for parents to say, hey, I get this every single day. What happened today that I didn't receive this? And there'll be a reason for why or whatever. But ultimately, we've seen a lot of upgrades, and Shaneika's area program is uniquely responsible for that. So please go ahead, Shaneika. This is your turn to talk
So
more to
even
Maria.
though the the Parent Resource Center is view only, we also serve as the communication hub. So like Mr. Riley was saying, we send out communications in reference to, late routes, route changes, inclement weather information. We've also gotten into sending out emergency information anytime there's something going on in the city that we think may impact the traffic. We would send out not necessarily saying it's going to be delayed, but just, to notify our parents, just to be a little bit mindful that it could be a little bit backed up this afternoon. If you live in DC, you know what I'm talking about. And anytime there is any type of emergency closures at the school and the kids need to be dismissed early and they're going to be picked up early and, dropped off earlier than the normal prescribed PM drop off time, we send communication when it comes to that as well. Our messaging system has gotten a lot better. Over the years. Gone are the days where we're manually calling parents on the phone, so we can get them out just quicker than we have ever been able to in a bigger a bigger population. So if we have, 100 routes that need to go out, we can get those out quicker. Any mass messaging that we need to go out, we always get that done a lot quicker. And I just want to speak on like route changes. That is the reason why it is very important that we have the correct contact information on file for our parents, because if they don't know, they run the risk of missing the bus, the next day or whenever the route is scheduled to change. We do those notifications at least 48 hours in advance prior to the route going live. And live means that's the day that it's going to start. So that is why it's imperative that we have the most updated contact information. So we're probably in the stage of over communicating now, but I would rather over communicate than under communicate.
Mm-hmm.
And if I could just add, the outreach team is always doing targeted outreach at those schools and those areas that we see we're having a greater need of parents and not getting the information. Parents aren't able to be contacted in the conventional ways that we generally do that. We take invites from schools who would like us to come and participate in parent meetings, back to school sessions. We do targeted outreach at city events. We host a table. We're there to answer questions to any parents who are prospective families who are thinking about whether or not they want to utilize transportation services, as well as take back information for those parents who bring to us things that they may have some concerns about or they may have questions about. We take it back, we work with the team, and we're able to work through those things with the school and the parent as well. And so we always make sure that we make ourselves available to any school, any group, any activity or event planning group that would like for us to come out and speak directly about what transportation services we offer and the information just related to how we actually support fate-related services. We definitely are happy to come out, happy to speak to any group that is in need.
Okay. Well, that really nicely kind of brings me to where I sort of wanted to end, because we are coming up on our time. You guys have been very chatty. I always appreciate that. One thing is there anything parents should look forward to? I know Director Riley talked a little bit about the possibility of a stipend program. Are there any other kind of changes or innovations that parents might be able to look for? And then just at a very high level, what kind of timelines are we looking at for changes and updates? Ms. Webb, I know I really appreciated you saying, hey, look, you're going to be notified of a route change at least 48 hours before it happens. But are there other timelines that, we need to know about or think about, or a parent should know that, hey, look, it takes X number of days for a change that the LEA makes to show up in OSSE's system? Are there things like that parents need to know? So.
Absolutely. Now that we are coming to the near of our last quarter of the school year, I believe, we're getting ready to head into that ESY season and the start of school year for 24-25. And so it's important that parents understand that once we receive a request, it can take up to 10 business days for that request to be processed. And that's not to say that it will take the entire 10 business days, but it does, it's a prolonged period of processing when we have a number of TRFs coming in, say at the start of the school year or at the start of the ESY program, whereas mid-school year, in the middle of the program, it may not take as long. So we need parents to just give us a little bit of understanding and support. And when we say we've received the TRF and it's being processed, and you should be looking forward to receiving this information soon. In addition to that, I would also say to them, the contact information that they provide to the school is updated within 24 hours. And so they should never confuse them correcting their contact information with the information for a TRF. So that TRF, the transportation request, is the address, the student's accommodations, any changes to schools or things of that nature, that has to be submitted through a transportation request. However, if it's a matter of a telephone number not being correct, that information is updated within 24 hours, and it is very helpful and useful to us. The sooner you can get to the school and change that information and update that information, the quicker we can get those notifications out to you. So those are the two timelines that I had in mind.
And if I
Yeah.
can just add on to that, going in, if you put a transportation request form in the system, going in and updating the telephone number is not going to do anything with that TRF. It does not hold it up from being processed. Like Dionne said, it's a real-time change, and it is so important for us to make sure we have that information correct in the system.
And two, we just opened or launched not just, but last school year, beginning of this school year, we launched a new website, a transportation request form dashboard where parents and families in the community could see their LEA, basically their school, to see how many TRFs eligible students there are versus the number of requests that have actually come in. So if there's a gap, let's say there's 20 eligible students, but only 10 request forms are in, then you know that there's a possibility that your student may not have gotten the transportation request form in by the LEA or the school ultimately. So call them up, find out if that's been the case. You know, it's a good marker to judge just kind of like where the school is in relation to that. And I think that's one way that parents can continue to support their own student, but also support the process by being proactive and going to that website to see that.
And AJE parents will recognize that from, we generally kind of the same time of year, every year say, hey, check to make sure, there's a TRF, and you all sending out the no TRF letters has been enormously helpful in helping families move LEAs to do that documentation. I did want to flag one thing that Ms. Webb said that I just think is so important. You talked about all the information on the transportation request form. I just want to make sure that families remember that things written down on the IEP do not magically appear on the transportation request form. So you can go to an IEP meeting, make an update to that IEP, and if somebody in that meeting, which is like the right place to make changes and update things and talk about the student's needs, but if nobody in that meeting takes the information from the IEP and puts it on the TRF, OSSE will have no idea.
Especially when it comes to things like accommodations, when we talked about specialized seatbelts, harnesses, things of that nature, nursing services, that all needs to be detailed within the student's profile. So it can be in the IEP, it can be in the transportation section, which is kind of like towards the back, but it would still need to be updated on the transportation request form because for some odd reason, the data pool doesn't pull the comment section. So they still need to go into the student's profile. The LEA SPED coordinator at the school will still need to detail this student is a wheelchair. This student, requires a one-to-one bus aid for student behavioral support. This student requires a nurse for medication assistance. So you're right. You can have it detailed in the IEP, but it still needs to be detailed on the transportation request form as well.
Yeah, and I can give an anecdote to that really quickly. This beginning of the school year, because of the work that was done with the transportation request form dashboard and our ability to route those TRFs on time because we had the information, we were able to service every route, so we had no unserviced routes, and we saw about a 99% efficiency with regard to buses leaving the terminal on time and getting to school on time with the students that were routed. And so the one kind of complaint that we got, like the first big day of DCPS coming aboard, was that a child didn't have a harness. And that was because the information wasn't transferred over to the request form, but we were able to rectify that. Like I think like the from the AM to the PM, we were able to send out our safety and training team to go and get get a harness and take it to the school in order for the PM transport. That is amazing as you think about what other jurisdictions were encountering at the beginning of the school year last year with the bus driver shortage and everything else, where schools were actually canceling classes because they couldn't get students to school. And so this is important work for all of us to kind of do together, and the parents play a major part of that by being proactive again in making sure these things are completed, because ultimately this is our job, this is our passion to serve these students, and the process works. And so we just encourage families to continue to advocate for themselves and advocate with us. Make demands on us, have a bit of patience, because it is a process, but they can demand high expectations of us, and it's our job to fill them. So that's what I would encourage for families.
Perfect. Thank you. And I think that's a great place to end. Again, I want to thank all three of you for being here, particularly Ms. Webb and Ms. McAdoo. I
Thank you so much.
Thrilled that Director Riley's here, but
Yes.
I'm a big fan of both of these ladies who have been doing serving DC families for a long time.
That's right. Absolutely.
And I'll put some of the links we mentioned in the comment section when we post this. But otherwise, is there anything you want to leave families with as we head out?
Give us a call at the Parent Resource Center. We're here 5 to 7. We can help. If we can't, we'll find someone who can.
Yeah, and I'm going to be clear, that's 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. 5 a.m.
Yes. Yes. Early.
Okay. Well, you all have a great day. Take care. And thank you again for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye.